Have you ever known someone who felt like a human fireplace? Someone who was so warm, so incredibly kind, and deeply thoughtful that you felt entirely safe in their shadow. You shared your secrets with them. You leaned on their shoulders, and they always seemed to know exactly what to say. But then, one ordinary day, they simply shut down. There was no theatrical screaming match, no thrown plates, no dramatic exit. There was only a profound, chilling, and absolute silence. The warmth vanished, replaced by an insurmountable distance. If this scenario sends a shiver of recognition down your spine, it is highly likely that you have crossed paths with an INFJ. The INFJ personality type is considered the rarest in the world. They are the quiet observers, the deeply empathetic souls, and the intuitive counselors of our society. They possess an almost magical emotional intelligence that allows them to read the unspoken pain in a room. Because they care so intensely, they consistently go out of their way to ensure that everyone around them is healed, heard, and happy. Therefore, when an INFJ suddenly pulls away and turns cold, the experience can feel incredibly disorienting. It can leave you feeling abandoned and painfully confused. But there is a hidden truth that you must understand. An INFJ does not shut people out easily. It is never an impulsive or random act. When their warmth turns to winter, it is always because something fundamental has shifted deep within their core. To truly comprehend why this rare individual goes cold, we have to journey into the architecture of their mind. At their absolute best, INFJs are the most fiercely loyal and caring companions you will ever encounter. They are the guardians of your vulnerability. However, to be an INFJ is to carry the weight of the world inside a very private heart. They notice the tiny, microscopic details that everyone else overlooks. They hear the subtle shifts in your tone of voice. They read the silence between your words. Because they are so highly attuned to the needs of others, they frequently give far more of themselves than is healthy. They will pour their own emotional energy into your empty cup, even when their own spirit is terribly dehydrated. But human endurance has a limit. Over the course of months or even years, if their deep emotional needs are repeatedly ignored, or if they are made to feel used, betrayed, or carelessly hurt, they slowly approach a psychological breaking point. And when that exact moment finally arrives, their reaction is not what society expects. They do not fight back with bitter words. They do not demand an apology. They simply go quiet. This is not an act of petty vengeance. The INFJ is not trying to teach you a lesson or inflict pain. In reality, going cold is the ultimate, desperate act of self-preservation. This phenomenon is so common among this personality type that psychologists and enthusiasts have given it a specific name. It is known as the INFJ door slam. But do not let the aggressive name deceive you. The door slam rarely looks like a dramatic, loud event. It is almost never a sudden explosion. Instead, it is a slow, methodical fading away. It might begin with reduced contact. Their text messages become shorter and less frequent. Their smiles become polite rather than genuine. They stop asking about your day with that signature deep curiosity. Eventually, it culminates in complete and utter silence. But regardless of how quietly the departure happens, the underlying message is absolute. The INFJ is completely done. They have likely given you chance after chance after chance in the quiet theater of their own mind. They have tried to gently guide the relationship back to a healthy place. But once they objectively realize that the connection is continuously causing profound harm to their spirit, they close the door, lock it, and throw away the key. And the most terrifying part for those left behind is that once an INFJ reaches this absolute zero, they almost never come back. Today we are going to explore the 6 profound, deeply psychological reasons why an INFJ reaches this ultimate point of no return. The very first reason an INFJ will go cold is due to catastrophic emotional overwhelm and sheer exhaustion. People with this personality type are naturally, almost supernaturally, tuned into the emotional frequencies of the people around them. They do not merely listen to your problems, they actually feel your problems. When a friend is suffocating under the weight of anxiety, grief, or immense stress, the INFJ unconsciously absorbs that heavy emotional energy. They act as a human sponge, soaking up the dark clouds in the room to make the sky brighter for everyone else. Over time, this massive emotional load accumulates in their nervous system. If they are not granted the necessary time and absolute solitude to wring out that sponge and recharge their spirit, they will inevitably face total burnout. In the early stages of this exhaustion, an INFJ might still appear incredibly calm, strong, and deeply supportive. They will still be the person staying awake until 3 in the morning to comfort a crying friend. They will still be the one volunteering to carry the heavy burdens when everyone else walks away. But what the outside world fails to see is the devastating toll this takes on their internal landscape. Their emotional battery is draining at an alarming rate, especially if they exist in an environment where they are constantly giving to others, but receiving absolutely no emotional nourishment in return. As the weeks turn into months, the exhausted INFJ will physically begin to alter. They are not just experiencing normal physical fatigue, they are emotionally bankrupt. You might start to notice that they have become hypersensitive to light and sound. You might see them staring blankly out of windows, looking physically present but spiritually miles away. They become significantly less engaged in conversations, offering brief nods instead of their usual deep insights. These are not character flaws, these are glaring red warning signs. Their entire neurological system is dangerously overloaded, and their soul is screaming for vast, empty space. If their subtle pleas for space are completely ignored, or if the people around them ruthlessly continue to take their energy without offering any tenderness in return, survival instinct kicks in. The INFJ shuts the system down. This withdrawal is not an act of punishment against you. It is pure survival. An INFJ desperately needs absolute quiet to untangle the massive web of absorbed emotions inside their head. Without this solitary sanctuary, they lose their own identity. When they eventually stop responding to messages, cancel plans at the last minute, and vanish from social circles, outsiders often accuse them of being cold. But the truth is, they have simply been caring far too much, for far too long, and they have absolutely nothing left to give. The second profound reason that triggers the infamous coldness is betrayal or the breaking of a sacred trust. To fully grasp this, you must understand that INFJs value genuine trust more than almost any other human currency. They might not announce this loudly, but when an INFJ chooses to peel back their protective layers and truly open their inner world to someone, it is a monumental event. It means absolutely everything to them. By nature, they are intensely private creatures. They guard their inner thoughts, their fears, and their dreams behind massive, invisible walls. They do not grant VIP access to their soul easily. Therefore, when they finally hand you the fragile key to their heart, and you carelessly drop it, or worse, intentionally crush it, the wound is devastatingly deep. The betrayal does not even need to be a massive cinematic scandal. It does not require a dramatic affair or a stolen fortune. It could simply be a casual lie, a broken promise that was deemed unimportant, or a consistent pattern of subtle disrespect. Whatever the specific action may be, the moment the INFJ realizes that you are not a safe harbor, the psychological detachment sequence initiates immediately. This detachment from a broken trust usually does not happen overnight. The INFJ possesses a deeply forgiving heart. They will often try to rationalize the betrayal. They will try to communicate, to express their hurt, and to offer the offender an opportunity for redemption. But if the painful behavior repeats itself, or if the person shows a complete lack of genuine remorse, the INFJ quietly begins dismantling the bridge between them. The reason this particular door slam feels so terrifyingly permanent is because the INFJ thinks long and hard before making the final decision. They are not impulsive beings. They will spend agonizing, sleepless nights replaying every single conversation, analyzing every action, and questioning if they themselves could have done more to save the connection. Once they reach the cold, hard, logical conclusion that the relationship is irreparably toxic and that the trust cannot be resurrected, they are completely done. To the outside observer, it seems shocking. Last week they were smiling and sharing a meal with you, but that was merely them giving the relationship its final, silent test. When the test is failed, they accept the grief. They do not seek revenge, because revenge requires emotional investment. They simply erase your presence from their future. Their silence is not a grudge, it is profound self-respect. The third agonizing reason an INFJ will vanish from your life is the deep, sinking feeling of being completely unappreciated or taken for granted. People often mistakenly believe that because an INFJ does not demand a spotlight, ask for lavish praise, or boast about their good deeds, they do not require appreciation. This is a tragic misunderstanding. While they do not want shallow flattery, being truly seen, deeply valued, and genuinely understood is the most critical emotional oxygen an INFJ needs to survive. They are the silent architects of your well-being. They are the ones who remember exactly how you like your tea, who send a comforting message right before your big presentation, and who will literally pause their own life to help you rebuild yours. They give from an endless well of emotional, mental, and physical generosity. They do not perform these acts of kindness to manipulate you or to gain a favor. They do it because nurturing the souls of others is woven into their very DNA. However, deep within their quiet hearts, they harbor a fragile hope that their immense efforts are recognized, that someone, somewhere, is paying attention to the heavy lifting they are doing behind the scenes. The devastating friction begins when the beautiful exchange of energy becomes entirely one-sided. If the INFJ is always the one initiating the check-ins, but their own phone remains completely silent when they are hurting. If they continuously offer a shoulder to cry on, but find themselves crying entirely alone in the dark. If their massive contributions to a friendship, a romantic partnership, or a workplace are treated as standard expectations rather than gifts of love, a quiet resentment begins to plant roots. An INFJ will never scream at you for not thanking them. They will never throw a temper tantrum demanding your gratitude. Instead, they will undergo a slow, agonizing retreat. They will quietly withdraw their investments. The warm daily messages will stop. The thoughtful little gifts will cease. The unwavering emotional support will evaporate. They begin to ask themselves deeply existential questions. Why am I bleeding out for someone who does not even notice I am cut? Does my presence in their life actually matter at all? Once they genuinely believe that their absence would go as unnoticed as their presence, the door slam happens. They pack up their immense reservoir of love and they silently walk away, seeking an environment where their beautiful heart is cherished, not exploited. When that profound meaning entirely fades away and the relationship becomes nothing more than an empty, repeating loop of superficial interactions, the INFJ loses the desire to stay. This internal, deeply philosophical closure is rarely shared or understood by the other person involved. To the friend or partner who is perfectly content with stagnation, the INFJ's sudden departure feels incredibly harsh, sudden, and completely unprovoked. They will say, "But everything was perfectly fine, we never even argued." But for the INFJ, the silent death of the relationship has been happening for a very long time. They have been quietly sensing the massive energetic shift. They have been reflecting in their journals, meditating on the growing distance, and trying to inject new life into the bond. But when they finally accept the hard truth that they have simply outgrown the space, they let go. This type of coldness is very unique because it is not fueled by anger, betrayal, or tears. It is fueled by peaceful acceptance. They refuse to fake an interest they no longer feel. They exit the stage cleanly, gracefully, and with absolute finality. They will cherish the beautiful memories forever, but they know that to stay would be an insult to their own soul's journey. The fifth, and perhaps most common daily reason an INFJ will suddenly disappear, is severe sensory overstimulation and the absolute, non-negotiable need to recharge. The modern world is overwhelmingly loud, fast, and aggressively bright. For an INFJ, whose nervous system is intricately wired to process every single micro-stimulation in their environment, this world can feel like a constant, chaotic assault. When they walk into a crowded room, they are not just seeing faces. They are hearing the overlapping conversations. They are absorbing the ambient anxiety of the strangers around them. They are noticing the flickering fluorescent lights, and they are feeling the heavy emotional tension in the air. Their brain is processing thousands of data points every single second. While they may sit there looking completely composed, elegantly sipping their coffee, inside, their mental processor is overheating dangerously. When this sensory and emotional noise reaches a critical, unbearable threshold, The INFJ will perform a vanishing act. They will literally disappear from the face of the earth. They do not retreat to be rude, standoffish, or arrogant. They retreat because they are drowning in the noise of existence, and solitude is the only oxygen tank available to them. This desperate need for a sanctuary is violently misunderstood by modern society. Friends might accuse the INFJ of ghosting them, of being flaky, or of acting distant for absolutely no reason. But from the perspective of the highly sensitive INFJ, they are merely retreating into their cave to heal their battered nervous system. They need absolute pin-drop silence. They need a soft blanket, a warm cup of tea, and a space where no one expects them to perform, to empathize, or to react. Healthy INFJs learn to master this cycle early in life. They will proactively cancel social obligations, turn their phones entirely off, and go entirely off the grid for a weekend. They rarely offer long, detailed explanations because they despise hurting people's feelings with the truth, which is, I love you, but being around you right now is physically exhausting. What the world perceives as a cold shoulder is, in reality, a profound act of self-care. However, if their loved ones aggressively refuse to respect this boundary, if they constantly knock on the closed door, send guilt-tripping text messages, and demand immediate attention, the INFJ's temporary need for rest will transform into a permanent icy shutdown. If you force an INFJ to engage before they have healed, they will simply cut ties with you to protect their peace. The sixth and final compelling reason an INFJ goes absolutely cold is their deeply ingrained desire to avoid chaotic, destructive conflict. Do not mistake this trait for cowardice. An INFJ is not inherently weak, nor are they terrified of standing up for what is right. In fact, their moral compass is fiercely strong. However, their brain processes emotion in a way that makes direct, aggressive confrontation feel violently jarring and profoundly counterproductive. To an INFJ, a screaming match is not a way to solve a problem. It is a terrifying display of lost control. When voices are raised, when impulsive, cruel words are thrown around like weapons, and when the environment becomes emotionally unsafe, the INFJ finds the entire ordeal utterly exhausting and entirely pointless. They see no logic in shallow arguments driven by ego. When an argument begins to escalate into hostility, their immediate, deeply wired instinct is to physically and emotionally pull away. This initial withdrawal is not a door slam yet. It is a strategic pause. It is them taking a massive step back to calm their racing heart, to gather their scattered thoughts, and to ensure they do not say something vicious that they will deeply regret for the rest of their lives. But if the conflict is continuous, if a partner or a friend constantly relies on passive aggression, screaming, or toxic manipulation to communicate, the INFJ's temporary space will crystallize into permanent distance. INFJs are deep, philosophical processors. They desperately crave true understanding, profound resolution, and calm communication. They want to sit down quietly and dissect the root of the pain. When they realize that the other person does not want to find peace, but merely wants to win the argument, to dominate, or to assign blame, the INFJ feels entirely disconnected. They refuse to participate in a toxic war game. So, instead of fighting back, instead of matching the screaming and the cruelty, they gracefully surrender the battlefield and walk away forever. They go completely cold. This silence is the ultimate boundary. It is their way of acknowledging that they cannot fix the toxic dynamic without entirely destroying their own sanity in the process. For to INFJ, inner peace is their most sacred treasure. They will gladly sacrifice a relationship, sacrifice a friend, and sacrifice their own short-term comfort if it guarantees that they will avoid long-term emotional damage. When you see an INFJ go cold after a long series of aggressive fights, know that they have exhausted every diplomatic option, and they have finally chosen themselves over the chaos. If you are listening to this and you recognize yourself as an INFJ, it is entirely possible that this journey feels incredibly familiar to your heart. Perhaps you are currently feeling the heavy guilt of having pulled away from someone recently. Perhaps society has made you feel like you are too sensitive, too complicated, or too quick to abandon ship. If that is your truth, please wrap these words around your soul. It is absolutely okay to profoundly protect your peace. It is not just okay, it is necessary. You are allowed to choose calm over constant draining effort. You are allowed to stop pouring your beautiful golden energy into cups that have massive holes in the bottom. Your empathy is a superpower, but it is not a free commodity for the world to exploit. And if you are someone who deeply loves an INFJ, let this be your gentle wake-up call. Pay very close attention to their quiet moments. Do not wait until their eyes lose their spark to realize they are drowning. Check in on them sincerely. Tell them how deeply you appreciate their existence. Give them vast oceans of space when they need to reset. And when they retreat into their quiet shell, do not bang on the glass. Sit patiently beside them and wait for the sun to rise again. Ultimately, the silence of an INFJ is a deeply profound teacher. It teaches us about the absolute limits of human endurance and the immense value of emotional reciprocity. An INFJ does not go cold without a monumental reason. Their heart is built to love, to heal, and to nurture everything it touches. So when that incredibly rare, beautiful warmth is withdrawn, it is a sign that the environment became entirely uninhabitable for a gentle soul. We must learn to treat the deeply empathetic people in our lives not as endless, indestructible resources, but as delicate, precious flames that need to be sheltered from the harsh winds of the world. Because beneath the terrifying coldness of an INFJ's door slam is simply a beautiful person who gave absolutely everything they could, who loved as hard as humanly possible until they simply couldn't bleed anymore. May you always cherish the warmth while it is there, and may you learn to deeply respect the profound, necessary silence when it falls.